I recently made my first trip back to Six Flags America in over a decade. I was on a coaster trip with my friend in Pennsylvania, and we wanted to make sure to hit this park before it closes later this year to get on all the coasters. We were lucky enough to ride all 9 of the roller coasters that this park has to offer, and there were definitely some surprises, both good and bad. We had a fun time at the park and got to get on everything without waiting in any lines, and it was just an overall pleasant experience. It's sad to see this park go, but before that happened, let's honor its legacy a bit. These are the roller coasters of Six Flags America, ranked up from worst to best. Coming in at a very dishonorable last place is Professor Screamore's Skywinder of Vekoma SLC, opened in 1995. Had I not had the displeasure of experiencing T3 at Kentucky Kingdom before its removal, this would easily take the spot for the worst roller coaster that I've ever ridden. Even with the new trains that don't subject you to any headbanging, this ride is ridiculously rough and uncomfortable all the way through, and there's just not a single good thing I can say about it. Even the name is terrible. They really should have just left it as Mind Eraser because at least that sounds cool. I'm not a huge fan of some of the roller coaster names the Six Flags chain has been coming up with recently. A lot of them just feel very long-winded and awkward to say, like Dr. Diabolical's Cliffhanger or something. I hope they eventually go back to some of the shorter names. Anyway, enough of that tangent. This coaster is just generally terrible and will not be missed when the park closes. Another coaster that will not be missed is Roar, a GCI wooden coaster opened in 1998, coming in at number 8. This is the other half of the worst coaster duo I've experienced by far. Now admittedly, it had a few redeeming qualities unlike Skywinder, but it was still an unbearably rough ride that put me in pain throughout. It does have a few good airtime moments, and the areas where it was retracked are noticeably smoother, but it overall just bangs riders around and has you begging for it to end. It's such a shame because I think the layout is actually pretty good and well paced. This would be a good ride if it wasn't jackhammering you the entire time. Even though this coaster is awful, it did pave the way for some of the great wooden coasters we see today that have been manufactured by GCI, so for that, I thank you, Roar. At number 7, we have the park's kiddie coaster, Great Chase, a Zamperla family gravity coaster opened in 1999. Yes, I put this above Roar and Skywinder because I would rather ride a kiddie coaster than get beaten to death. In general, I do rank coasters like this above the super painful and unenjoyable ones because if given the choice, I would rather ride this just so I don't get a headache. Anyway, this is just a standard run-of-the-mill kiddie coaster, and I rode 4 of these throughout my trip, which was kind of funny to me. Nothing bad to say about it, but at the end of the day, it is just a kiddie coaster. Okay, now we'll get to the coasters that were actually fun. Coming in at number 6 is Ragin' Cajun, a Reverchon spinning coaster, opened in 2014. These aren't going to be the most thrilling rides ever, but I do enjoy a good spinning wild mouse from time to time. My friend and I got a pretty good solid ride where we managed to distribute the weight unevenly enough to get a good amount of spinning, so overall a good experience. This is the only coaster we actually had to wait in a line for, mainly due to the low capacity, but it was a fun coaster and had a nice unique theme to it. Alongside Great Chase, Ragin' Cajun is the only coaster I would legitimately see getting relocated, so let's hope that happens. At number 5 we have Firebird. It was opened as a B&M stand-up coaster in 1990 and converted to a floorless for the 2019 season. It was really cool getting to ride the first roller coaster ever made by Swiss manufacturer Bolliger and Mabillard. Contrary to what I've heard many say, I did not think this coaster was rough at all. It was very smooth throughout most of the layout actually, with the exception of one jolt about halfway through. Even though it wasn't very rough, there was definitely a major lack of forces throughout it. It just felt like it ran very slow and didn't take any of its inversions with force or whip. I honestly didn't think Firebird is bad by any means, but it's very clear that B&M has majorly improved between now and then. Alright, so probably the biggest surprise of this video is going to be number 4, where we have Superman Ride of Steel, an Intamin mega coaster, opened in 2000. I remember loving this coaster as a kid, and I was super excited to ride it after so many years to see if it was still as good as I remember. I ended up being so disappointed by this ride in so many ways, however. Starting out, just boarding the train, the lap bars were very uncomfortable as I'm on the taller side, so my legs felt very cramped. The first drop in Camelback provided little to no airtime, even in the back row, and then that massive helix just doesn't do anything if I'm being honest. The best part of the ride was the airtime hill that follows the portion of straight track, which did give a nice pop of air. Sadly, aside from this one moment, the ride just doesn't do anything and has a lot of janky turns and transitions throughout its layout. The thing that it does have going for it is its speed, which is enough to elevate it to this spot, but I just didn't enjoy it as much as the coasters above it, even though I really wanted to like it. Number 3 is Wild One, a PTC wooden coaster, opened in 1917, relocated to Six Flags America in 1986. It's crazy to think that a coaster built over a century ago is still here, even if much of it was rebuilt after being destroyed by a fire. Despite being rougher than your average wooden coaster, I thought Wild One was an enjoyable ride with plenty of good airtime moments on its out and back layout. I thought it was a nice touch having it run through the mountain-like structure of the old Flume ride on both the outbound and return trip, just adding a little something to it. I really didn't think it stood out very much if I'm being honest, but it was just a good classic wooden coaster with that old school rumble. Taking the silver is Joker's Jinx, a premier LIM launch coaster opened in 1999. While they aren't usually super notable, I'm a fan of these premier Spaghetti Bowl launch coasters. I've ridden all 4 that are in the US, and the only one I didn't love was Flight of Fear at Kings Island on account of it being significantly rougher than all the others. In my mind, Joker's Jinx runs just about the same as Poltergeist at Fiesta Texas. I mean, duh, they are clones. I think so I slightly prefer the Flight of Fear at King's Dominion just because that one is just as smooth as these, and it being in the dark definitely just adds another layer of fun to it. But even without the dark factor, Joker's Jinx stands on its own as a really fun coaster that is paced pretty well and goes through its inversions quickly. Also, just a quick shout out to the ride crew who were very friendly talking to us while we waited for the train to cycle. I'd love to see this ride get relocated somehow, but I'm very doubtful. And finally, the best coaster at Six Flags America by far is Batwing, a Vekoma Flying Dutchman, opened in 2001. This coaster completely exceeded my expectations and gave us a great ride. I'm super grateful that we got to get on this in the first place, given how it seemed to have a major part break a few months ago and how it's prone to breakdowns in general. My friend had never ridden a Flying Dutchman before, so this was the main reason we made time to come to Six Flags America on our trip. I had liked this ride as a kid, but had hated Nighthawk at Carowinds, which I got to ride more recently before its removal. I was very pleasantly surprised with how smooth Batwing was and how well it went through all of its inversions. The vertical loop in particular was a wonderfully weird element that just gave a very unique feeling. The coaster feels way more dynamic than B&M Flyers, and I have it ranked above all of the ones I've ridden except for Tatsu. I wish more of these had been built because I honestly think there was so much potential if it had just been designed at a time where there was more modern technology to aid it, and I'm so sad that it's going to be going extinct soon. It was such a good experience that despite having some decently high expectations for it, it managed to completely exceed them, and I ended up putting it in my top 50. If you're able to, I highly encourage you to get one more ride on Batwing before it goes extinct. Well, that about wraps it up. What are your favorite rides at Six Flags America? Even if it didn't have the best reputation, this park was a very fun time on my trip, and it's really sad to see it go. I hope that they surprise us by relocating some of these coasters to other parks so its legacy can live on. If you like coaster ranking videos like this, make sure to subscribe to see more of them. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.